Hi everyone, welcome to today's Tech Tip Tuesday. For those who celebrated the 4th here in America this weekend, happy 4th of July. We hope you had a nice long weekend and we're happy to have you back here joining us today. Today is actually a submission from an attendee, Matt. So Matt, hopefully you're joining us here today. If not, you can always watch the recording on our YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about matching your storage needs with some best fit solutions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Howard, our solutions architect, who can go over some scenarios and different details. Howard, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are, or good evening. You could be, we have some visitors from overseas, and you're always welcome. Today, as Christy mentioned, Matt submitted a question, and the question was basically matching your storage needs. So you have specific requirements, and you want to make sure that your storage meets those requirements for your application, for your infrastructure, and in general, well, how do you do that? So, a lot of it comes down to size and type. How much storage do you need? Do you need block? Do you need object? Do you need a file system? So you need to look at those type of things first, and those are pretty obvious. And even cost is somewhat obvious when you look at it. It's going to be so much per gigabyte per month. Except that one of the things that that don't come into the equation is that you have overhead, and so you need to take that into account. Otherwise, your storage cost is going to be a lot higher. So if you're going to deploy your storage, for example, in a data center or on site, you're going to have power and any type of connection costs. And then if you have any type of management locally, like IT staff, you got to pay for them. And that it all comes into your overhead costs. Now with Zadara, when you deploy an on-premise type of solution, the IT staff is greatly minimized. What we do is we manage all your storage remotely for you, but the cost of power and rack, that's still something you have to take into account for the cost. The second thing you need to look at is enterprise features. So it's pretty much assumed that you're going to have enterprise features with any type of storage you buy today. In the cloud, it's not so much true. So you need to look and make sure that there are enterprise features available to your actual storage appliance that you're attaching in the cloud. So some of the things that are very important, for example, is snapshots. So can you take a snapshot of your data? Can you do backups? Is it built into the storage solution? Mirroring, do you want to mirror the data offsite or even to another region within the cloud, so you have accessibility to any type of disaster recovery. So you need to take that into account, and if you're trying to build that in the cloud itself, again, that's going to take a lot of money and time and just IT staff just to bring that up. Now, what I'll demo today is just basically performance. So, these are little, analysis tools that we use just to make sure everything runs smoothly and meets the application's requirements. And there's 5 or 6 tools that we use, customers use all the time. And I mean, you will have your favorite tool to test the storage or instance that you're trying to configure. One of the favorite ones that I like is the iPerf. That gives you a network bandwidth, and this is really good in AWS. If you go ahead and deploy an EC2 instance, you should really run iPerf on that to make sure it's meeting your requirement. If you do a low to moderate you'll get a certain bandwidth on that. If you do a 10 gig instance, you're not going to get 10 gig. The best case I've ever seen is 1.2 gig. So you may want to scale down on some of the networking requirements to make sure you're not overpaying or overutilizing or underutilizing the type of instance. For the storage itself, there's a couple tools like IOPing. IOPing is a quick tool to go ahead and test your storage. It's similar to ping, where you can ping a storage device, but if you can't ping a storage device, IOPing works great. FIO is another utility that we use, which is just a file IO. Some of the lesser known ones, IOZone, these are all file system ones. And Iometer, the Iometer is more block, and then that's pretty much a Windows utility. The other three are pretty much gonna run on Linux. Also, if you look at if you're comparing any type of storage, make sure you know what the block size is. So, for example, if you're doing fiber channel, that's usually going to be a 512 byte block, and then so if you see like, oh, we do 60 million IOPS, that's probably going to be a 512 byte read sequential. You'll see that advertised quite a bit. We pretty much use for file systems, we all use the 4K read and write. So I would specify, if you're doing any type of test, do random read, small I/O. That works the best. In AWS, they have a term called provision IOPS, which is PIOPS, and that's all 16K. So if you need, if you have an application or a database that you're trying to test using provision IOPS, most of the utilities that do the testing are going to do a small file size. So even though you may need 4K, you're still going to get provision with 16K IOs. And so the application, if you use, for example, elastic block storage, you're going to get 16K. So let's take a look at some of the utilities here and just give you a quick little demo. So, if you can ping something, for example, here's a ping of this is IO ping. So if you want to do an IO ping, and you can specify your mount point, and it's really straightforward. Here I have a ping of a Zadara. Now this is going to be a 4K IO, and it goes to an NFS4, and you can see we're about a millisecond, and then it does an average of 1.6, depending on the traffic. And that'll vary from each region. So I have 4 different regions up here, availability zones. So if I did the same thing in a different region, for example, sorry, zone. Now, so this is East 1C. Here I'm getting under a millisecond. So if you happen to deploy something in 1C against Zadara, that's going to be the best case. So you may want to create a subnet for Zadara and then deploy it on the 1C region, and you'll get really very, very fast response to the storage. And with any type of NFS storage that you're trying to evaluate, latency is the killer. You want to get the lowest latency as possible. So this happens to be the best one. So let's take a look at, here I have an EFS mount, and you can see it's a lot higher. Before we were getting sub millisecond, now we're getting about 2 milliseconds. So it's about, well, the average is 3. So about 3 times higher latency on the EFS versus the Zadara.
Howard, we have a
Now
question.
you can do things.
If you don't mind me interrupting here, but it's relevant. So, is there a benchmark for the latency that our customers, partners, or anyone else joining us today should be looking for? What would, I know it probably varies on what you're doing and across the regions, but is there kind of a benchmark you could give the audience?
Yes, that's a very good question. If you're going to run a database, I would try to keep anything under a millisecond or less. That'll give you a really good response. For any type of SQL or database application. If you're using NFS and you're storing large files, even the 3 milliseconds is perfectly acceptable. Even up to 6 milliseconds you can get away with. Now, if you start using smaller files like 4K, you're going to see some impact of performance on the of your application if you're accessing files, and that could be anywhere if you're doing like a backup. So, for example, if you happen to do, for example, if you're doing like a rsync or any type of backup, like using Robocopy in Windows, all these little file access is going to be very painful, and your backup's going to take hours and hours, and it's just going to grow immensely based on the number of files. So wherever you can lower the ping, you're going to get better response. And also, if you can do things in parallel, rsync in parallel, or for example, Robocopy again in parallel, you can issue more outstanding IOs, and that sort of limits the pinging. Are there any other questions, Christine, at this time?
No, and I think that was a great answer. So thank you. Please continue.
So another thing you can do with IO ping is you can, right here we specify size. I mean just the regular 4K. You can specify size. So if you want to do a 1 meg IO, this will give you a latency, and then it'll give you roughly this particular interface is going to give you 75 megabytes a second, and then you can do something similar with Zadara. Here the latency is a little bit longer, and then it goes up. And it's 55. Now this is a different zone also. Now the question is, now this particular region availability zone is closer, so you can see the difference between the two. So here between this particular East 1C and Zadara, we're talking 155 megabytes a second. So you can see differences between that. So you need to check all your zones between your EC2 instances and your storage, and that'll give you the best case when you're trying to deploy your application. Another utility is, let's see if I can find it, is FIO. So if we do, now this gives you a real-time performance measurement of random IO. So if you want to see what it's doing roughly about 3K IOPS, and that's actually to the block storage. So if I do a CD that and go to our, this is going to be our mount point, and it'll give you a real time. So our local file system is 3K versus 300 IOPS. And then if we look at our Zadara, So this is actually running pretty fast. So this is 5K IOPS to Zadara for small IOs. So you can see that even though, with this particular VPSA that we have, we're running 6K IOPS compared to the 3K local file system. So even though we're a millisecond away, you still can get extreme performance with the NAS if it's configured properly. In this case, this is SATA, and then it's got caching enabled. So a lot of the software-defined storage that we provide, you can have the type of system that you need to meet your requirements. And so those are the type of tests you want to run. I didn't go into IO zone or iometer, but whatever is your favorite tool, go ahead and test it. But make sure you test all the zones and any type of test that meets your application.
So Howard, these are all great tests. Awesome resource for people in the audience. Question for you though, when someone's running this test and they see a discrepancy and the latency is not where they want it to be, what's some things that they can be checking from a performance standpoint to make sure to try and get that performance where they need it to be? Do you have any, best practices or tips in that sense?
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do is, well, if you're doing an AWS, you can, of course, use different types of media. You can do provision IOPS, for example, instead of, or local storage, EBS. Uh, that's one way to do it. With Zadara, you can do a couple things. So you can change the media. So in this case, I have SATA with our caching enabled. So about 10, we covered our caching layer before. You can turn that on and off and compare the two and see if that meets your requirements. Another thing is if the raw performance of the SATA drives do not meet your requirement, you can go to SAS. So SAS gives you a lower latency than the SATA. So instead of at the disk level itself, it's going to be about 2 millisecond latency, where SATA is going to be about 4 or 5. So you can go to a faster drive. And if you need extreme performance, hundreds of thousands of IOPS, you can always go to our SSDs and then scale that out depending on the performance. So that's how you do it in Zadara. EFS is a little bit more challenging because you have to go ahead and spin up different instances. With us, you can go ahead and test it, add drives, migrate data back and forth as a comparison. So during our offering on the 7-day trial, what we do is we tell customers to put all the media types in and then go ahead and migrate data back and forth, enable, disable cache, get the thing tuned for your application, and then you're ready to go. And then it's just basically everything's should run as for your application.
Great, thank you.
So, are there any last questions on this?
Those were it for today. Unless anyone has any other final questions in the questions tab, go ahead and submit anything. Otherwise, it looks like we're all set for the day. Thank you, everyone who joined. Thank you, Matt, for submitting this topic. And you can reach Howard at howard@zadarastorage.com with any follow-up questions, or on Twitter at HowardY. And for those of you who aren't aware, if you submit a topic now, we're doing a promotion where if we choose your topic, we'll go ahead and send you a $25 gift card to Starbucks so that you can enjoy a coffee on us during your next Tech Tip Tuesday. So the way you submit a topic is feel free to just shoot us an email, or if you go to this bit.ly here, bit.ly/askmeanything, go ahead and submit your topic. I'm going to go ahead and put the URL in the chat for you guys. So if anyone has any topics, that we haven't covered, please let us know. And if we think it's a good one, then we'll go ahead and get it on the schedule and hopefully cover your topic. So thanks again, and hopefully we will see you next week. Howard, do we have something lined up for next week yet, or is it to be determined at this point?
It's still to be to be determined.
Okay.
TBD, I want to say. But yeah, submit your tip, and then I'll cover it next Tuesday.
All right, great. And as always, the VPSA user manual is a great resource for all things VPSA and Zadara storage. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week.